Gil Moore of Triumph. Welcome to 69 Faces of Rock. How are you today?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Okay, so right now you are promoting a documentary about Triumph called Rock and Roll Machine. How did this come about?
Well, the directors, Sam Dunn and Mark Kadzielawa, they were contacted by our video director, who's also a film director, Don Allen from Revolver Films, and he had the genesis of the idea that he developed with the band, and the late great writer Peter Goddard. And Don transitioned the film at a certain point when he felt Bangor were the right venue. And they made a co-production agreement, and they sort of joined forces, if you will, as a production company. And they also collaborated on the vision for the film, the story, the narrative, the whole kit and caboodle.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you participated in this documentary, were there any aha moments?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I mean, I guess, right out of the gate, their vision for where we were going to go with it and, whatever sort of conceptions the band had are completely different. They started interviewing us, and they wanted to do exploratory filming at Metalworks up in our attic, which figures prominently in the film. And at first we were like, why are they doing that? But they had a vision, they had a plan. They took a lot of things that I guess the band would have taken for granted, that they thought through the lens of the camera were things that would be of interest. So yeah, there were quite a few aha moments, and they didn't come early on, honestly, Mark. When we watched rushes of the film, because they're little bits and pieces, we really couldn't see kind of where it was going. And the aha moments came when we actually saw the film pretty much completed. And we started to see, okay, this is how it's been woven together. This is why the story now makes sense. And really have to give credit, particularly to Mark Kadzielawa's editing was phenomenal. The way he, with that editing, was able to stitch together and create, continuity that otherwise wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for his directorial capabilities.
Mm-hmm. And what challenges did you face while making this documentary?
Well, I think just the whole COVID slowdown was probably the biggest one, that everybody faced for different reasons in whatever businesses, that, they were in, whether you were, working at the Home Depot selling hammers and nails, or whether you were, rock bands trying to be on tour. Didn't matter who you were. Nobody escaped COVID one way or the other. So the film business was no different. So, I mean, that was the biggest obstacle. They have a very, very good company at Bangor Films, and they really had strict COVID protocols. So they really didn't have too many setbacks associated with staff, getting ill. But I would say in terms of keeping things moving, it just, every single thing you try to do during COVID, as just seems to take twice as long. And, it's twice as complicated. Sometimes just like picking stuff up from the University of Toronto, where our Triumph archives are, for example. Mark had to do a lot of that. And normally, if it wasn't in COVID times, it wouldn't be a big deal. But during COVID, you have to make an appointment. There has to be social distancing. They don't have as many staff moving things around in the music archive as they normally have. Yada, yada, yada. It just runs like that. So I guess those were the things. I mean, from the band's point of view, we were here, we were in town, we weren't going anywhere. So it was pretty easy for us. They made it pretty easy for us. They orchestrated the entire Fan Fest, which was, of course, a huge logistical operation, but they handled all of that. And so I think probably the boys in the band, we got the better end of that deal as far as complications and obstacles. We we were relatively unscathed compared to the banger boys and girls.
When should we expect this documentary to be available?
So it's been out. There was a staggered release, so it came out in Canada, a couple of months ago. But I know that the pay-per-view release is going to be, the streaming release is on nugs.net, and that is on the 13th, I believe. You might have it there, Mark. Is it the 13th of May?
I did see a press release like that.
Yeah, on nugs.net. So that's going to be a way for anybody. That's worldwide. That's a worldwide streaming release. And I know that there are other deals that are being made by our US distributor, which is Round Hill, that are going to get other streamers involved. I'm told that it will be available on Amazon Prime, as well as on Apple iTunes, and two other streamers that I can't recall off the top of my head. But I know that that's something that's in the works. It hasn't happened yet. There's also a DVD that's going to be released. I can't give you a release date, but the DVD is well on its way. I saw some artwork for it the other day, and that'll be available, pretty simple, I would imagine, Amazon, anywhere really.
Well, that looks like it's gonna happen. It's gonna be big. I think the Triumph fans are gonna really eat this up, and it's gonna be a great thing, not only for the fans, but for the band as well. So right now, maybe we can create a limited kind of documentary, right? I will try to show you some records that you were part of, and if you could kindly say a few things about them, maybe some trivial things that would maybe surprise your longest serving fans. So it all started with this lovely record, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first record is, any band, it's near and dear to your heart, because that's the first embryonic trip into the studio, getting to feel each other out. So, that was a watershed moment, when we finally got in the studio. And also, we were such young guys, just being in the studio, it's just such a thrill to be in a big recording studio with real equipment, real engineers, and, makes you feel like your band has somehow become the real deal. So there's no album like the first album.
True. Then came the Rock and Roll Machine, and that's also the title of the documentary.
Yeah, so Rock and Roll Machine, we recorded that, here in Toronto, and we really got a great role, in our hometown with the first album, with the debut album. So Rock and Roll Machine was the first album that was released in America. So that was a big thrill for us, because Canadian bands always have looked at the US as being, the sign that you're doing something, or that you're making waves, or you're on your way to making it, if you can get across that border and, make some noise. And that's what Rock and Roll Machine did for us.
Yeah, okay. All right, next one here. This one actually sports the classic Triumph logo.
Well, I remember about that is Rick Emmett artwork, which is, Rick's artwork, permeated all our records, including that logo that's on your chest right now. That's a Rick Emmett creation. And he created that game board to go along with the song, Just a Game. And at first I thought, I don't know if anybody's going to really get this, or anybody's going to, that they're going to think it's, funny or silly, or what their impression is going to be. But it's funny, over the years, like, so many people comment on that artwork and on the actual, the squares and the fact that fans have played it. I saw this year somebody made an unbelievable cake that was that image that was all over the internet, a great big gigantic cake of the Just a Game board. When you flip open the gatefold and you see it on the inside. But I think musically, one of the things that happened there, Hold On came off that record. That was the first sort of, we'd had album radio in the States behind us at this point, but that was the first time we got top 40 radio on our side. So that was a good change of pace, or open up new markets for us, I guess you'd say.
Progression of Power.
Progressions of Power, we went back into the studio and tried to create a more, I'll call it a raw sound, or a more just, you know, back to basics, live off the floor sound. It was just like a creative decision. So we set the drums up in the studio that we were in at the time, which was just prior to when we built Metalworks, called Phase One. And we had the drum set up in a loading bay. So, and I think they only used, you know, maybe 3 microphones, maybe 4 microphones to mic the kit, as opposed to, you know, having microphones all over the place. So it was a very, very much, you know, a throwback to, I don't want to call it primitive recording. It's done intentionally, but there's a lot of bleed in the microphones. It's a very sort of unpolished engineering tactic that you know, changes the sound considerably. And we were very excited about the sound change at that point. And actually, to me, they're some of the best tones that we got on any record. And we had some really heavy songs on there, like Nature's Child, that, you know, they weren't radio hits per se, but a lot of fans, they became fan favorites. I Live for the Weekend was off that record. That was the first track that ever really started to break for us in the United Kingdom, in Europe, and is still a track that gets played a lot in Europe, and of course in America as well, and Canada. But that track, I Love for the Weekend, I think it probably got more airplay on Fridays than any Triumph song ever, because of the title.
Yeah, things like that do happen. Allied Forces.
Well, that was the first Metalworks record, and you know, I really love some of the drum tones that we got, because we built a big wood room. That wood is just, you can hear it. Not only in the drums, you can hear it on guitars as well. And some of the tips on the studio construction, which we got from my buddy Eddie Kramer, you know, who famously worked with the Beatles and Zeppelin, and probably is most known for his work with Jimi Hendrix, really added something to our sound. Having that studio, we also had a whole bunch of really fabulous microphones and some better outboard gear. Outboard gear was getting a little more fancier, for lack of a better word. You know, by that year, there was a big change in the way recordings were being made. And I think that it was, for us, I don't know, it was a pivotal album, was a pivotal moment. You know, some of the songs that emanated from that record, you know, Allied Forces, for one, kind of became a, you know, call to action for all Triumph fans, and still is. You know, we considered our fan base the Allied Forces. That's what the title is, even though all the lyrics are sort of, you know, military themed and so on. It's all about our fans. And, you know, you're from Chicago, and speaking of Chicago, I mean, there were never any fans more intense than in Chicago, starting in the very early days when we played the Aragon Ballroom before we got up to Rosemont Horizon or Allstate Arena. You know, they were truly Allied Forces.
Still are to this day. Never surrender.
Well, by the time that album rolled around, I mean, things were really, we were kind of a well-oiled machine at that point. You know, we had, you know, a lot of airplay, a lot of video play, played a lot of big shows like, you know, the US Festival and a lot of stadium shows. Texas World Music Festival was huge show. The American Rock Festival, we co-headlined with Ozzy Osbourne. We played Alpine Valley Music Theater, which was probably the biggest outdoor year after year event in the Midwest, as well as Day on the Green in San Francisco, which is at Alameda Stadium, I believe. It's probably one of the biggest California-based shows that was a perennial favorite among music fans. So it was just kind of a great time for our touring. And, you know, musically, I think we'd made enough records at that point where we were pretty dialed in the studio. And yeah, some good memories from the Never Surrender record.
And speaking of US Festival, here it is. It came out recently, but what a thrill.
Yeah, it surely was. I mean, Steve Wozniak had a vision that, you know, few others, if any, before him or since have had. And, it's so, horribly ironic right now what's going on in Ukraine, because Steve's vision, and the reason it was us, many people have confused it with US, but it's not. His intention was us, and the us meant bringing people together through music. And in particular, he had targeted Russia in hoping that there would be a way to, and I can't put it in his terms because he's a computer scientist and I'm not, but whether it was via satellite or whatever his vision was, to try to connect the countries. I don't know that it was all that successful in that regard, but it's certainly on the site itself in America, in Glen Helen Park in California. It was just unbelievable. Like, there was nothing bad happened. There really was this vibe of us and bringing people together, under the different, genres of music that prevailed over the 3 days. Heavy Metal Sunday, as they called it, was the big one. That's when the biggest crowds came out. I mean, if you looked at the roster, which was, Motley Crue, Van Halen, Triumph, Scorpions, Ozzy, I don't think there was, anybody there that couldn't fill an arena, on their own. So when you put all those bands together on one stage at one time, it made for some phenomenal fan counts. We came in a helicopter, as I think all the bands did. And when you flew in, you flew over the site. So you have to look down and just see the sheer scope of the venue, and the number of people there was just, it was outrageous.
Yes, I mean,
still friends with Steve, by the way, and Steve's in the movie, as you'll see.
Unreal. Thunder 7.
Back to Rick's artwork, isn't that great? I mean, he riffed off Da Vinci on that one, I believe, but it's I love that graphic. As far as the tracks and so on, we were pretty polished at that point. Like, we made the Spellbound video in LA, and we spent more time in LA in and around that album, which I never enjoyed. Always wanted to be back in Toronto. I think we're just northern lads, grew up playing hockey, and that's where you get us in that 85-degree day after day heat, and suddenly we start to not work as hard. So we escaped back to Canada. Most of the recording was done at Metalworks, and we had I think what I remember most about Thunder 7 actually is the tour, because it was just an awesome tour. We had smoking hot lasers, and we had some lighting effects that we'd never had before, and we had the big bad pyro going loud, and just the whole theater of the performance was such that we'd been, I think our lighting director, Paul Dexter, too, he was really hitting his peak. So it was just a phenomenal tour, and radio embraced the record. Every city we went into, we were all over the radio. So good times. That's what I can tell you about that phase.
Now, at this point, you were well into the 80s. How did things change from the 70s into the 80s for the band?
I think in the 70s, I mean, there's a lot of changes. First of all, recording. So recording in the 70s was a lot more primitive. They had a lot less abilities in the studio to edit things and combine things. The 80s is when digital started to kick in, which was a mix of good and bad, I think, in terms of the tone and, what it did to the creative spirits of, musicians and producers and so on, and the tributaries that it led them down in terms of what they could do with this new technology. So there's a big change in the sound of records that everyone can hear. There's a lot more of the deep, throaty reverb, more highly compressed, I'll call it. Just that's a generalization, but generally true, that you hear in 80s radio versus, the more natural, simple, less convoluted or less, let's say less gilded in the 70s. So in a lot of ways, I kind of prefer the stuff that came out of the 70s into the very early 80s. The late 80s, I thought, you know, engineers went down some rabbit holes that they shouldn't have gone down, and we did as musicians as well, with you know, taking instruments and trying to get too much out of them that they weren't intended to produce, and getting a lot of sounds and tones that were just kind of that's just my opinion, you know. But I like this, comparing those two decades. I think what happened in the 80s, we got too many tools in our hands that we could create problems with. And I think, you know, it was in the late 80s or early 90s when we had to say, hey, you know what, throttle back a little bit. You know, what we were doing in the 70s wasn't altogether wrong, you know. So I had to kind of learn from some mistakes that that happened in recording technology in the late 80s.
Yeah. Now here's your proper live album at that time, Stages, right?
Yeah, that was a great record because we it's a combination of recordings that we made, you know, on several tours, and you know, they were all in, you know, we had big recording trucks coming around with us to arenas in the Midwest, and we recorded, I think, a half a dozen shows. I think we got Detroit in there. I know we got Fort Wayne, Indiana in there. There could be a Chicago, I can't remember, but and or a Cleveland. It was all done in the Midwest mainly. And it's, I think it kind of, we were very much a touring band, very much a live band. And I thought that the Stages record kind of gave everybody what they'd been asking for, because we were getting pushed for a live record and we hadn't had one. And that was I'm very proud of that record.
Sport of the Kings.
Sport of Kings, we were getting a little bit shoved into trying to reinvent ourselves by the record label. And it was a tough experience recording Sport of Kings, because we got pulled back to LA again, where I thought harder for us to be as diligent as we are when we're up here in our own place. Although we did come back, and a lot of it was done at Metalworks, but I felt like we got off to a slow start. We had a big fallout with the producer, which has sort of been well publicized, but the result of that, the beauty of it was, that's how we met Mike Klink, because at the time, this was before Mike had done Guns N' Roses or Metallica or anything, and he was assisting Ron Nevison. So we formed a lifelong relationship with Mike, and he's actually producing, as we speak, our tribute album, which has been done primarily in Los Angeles, and it's got great singers on there from Styx, and Larry from Styx. It's got Phil from Bon Jovi on there on guitar as well as vocals. It's got Mickey Thomas from Starship, Ann Wilson from Heart. It's got tremendous Joey Belladonna from Anthrax on there. Sebastian Bach, I can't forget him, my favorite. They got tremendous people, and the musicians are phenomenal. So, you know, those are all Mike's relationships, like Kenny Aronoff on drums. I love Kenny. I've never met him. You know, Tommy Aldrich, I love him. Never met him, but he's on our record. And some of the other guitar players, Anita Strauss, you know, wow, what an amazing woman and guitar player she is. All of these are Mike's relationships. And we formed our relationship with Mike, as I said, when we did the Sport of Kings record. So sometimes one door closes and another opens. So the door with Ron closed, but the door with Mike opened, and he's been our buddy ever since. And we're looking forward to getting the final stages of the tribute record. He's looking forward, I should say, probably getting us out of his hair and getting it finished, and getting it out. And hopefully, Triumph fans will get some really wacky surprises, because I'll tell you, these recordings they sound completely new, fresh, and different approaches to the original Triumph recordings. And I think there's going to be a lot of surprises for people.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Surveillance, which was your last record in the original run.
Yeah, we were somewhat out of gas when we recorded Surveillance. You know, the Ron Nevison experience had kind of I don't know, it had just put us all sort of in a funny headspace. And, you know, I think I think there's some good tracks on Surveillance, but we didn't tour quite as long on it. And, you know, I think our creative juices were waning. We had a couple tracks on there that we didn't write, that were written by other writers. And that, to me, never worked out particularly well. The best songs that we had were the ones that involved the three of us one way or the other, jamming songs out, or ones that are, one of us had written the better part of, and those are the songs that I think kind of resonated with the fans as well. So yeah, not my favorite record, but I don't think it's a bad record. But it's not for me to judge. It's for Triumph fans. There's some Triumph fans that their favorite track is on that record. So
yeah,
different strokes for different folks, I guess.
True. The band split up after that. Did you see the split coming? Was it a surprise split? What happened?
I guess I could. I mean, we were all at different stages of our life. I mean, my father passed away, which has changed everything for me. I didn't want it. I'm an only child. I didn't want to leave my mother alone and be touring when she was grieving. So, I had my own issues there. Rick creatively wanted to do something a little different. I think he was just getting tired of the same routine. He wanted to do some solo records, as he did, where he played jazz and he played other genres of music. So I think he wanted to do that. I think Mike was like me. He's getting kind of tired of the intense grind of touring. At a certain point, what probably would have been smarter is we should have taken a year or two off, and instead of what ended up happening. you can't change history, but whatever happened at the end happened at the end. And we had a fight, we got over it, we're brothers again. So have you got a brother or a sister you've had a fight with?
Yeah. I know the feeling. But you guys came back with Edge of Excess, which was a very unusual record. How did this come about?
So I love Edge of Excess, and Phil X is one unbelievable guitar player, and he's my brother too. I mean, I've been very fortunate I played with Rick Emmett and I played with Phil X. So there's two of the best guitar players on planet Earth, those two guys. I was lucky to play with them both. And even though it was only one record with Phil, it was a great experience, and he's gone on to, replace Richie Zambora and Bon Jovi, and he's done an amazing job. I don't know if you've seen Bon Jovi with Phil on guitar, but it's terrific. And, we made this record, and it was, we worked with another buddy of mine who's a writer in Toronto named Mladen Alexander, and he co-wrote some of the songs with us. Phil and I wrote some of the songs together, and I did all the vocals, of course, which was, that was different for me, doing all the vocals. And then sound-wise, we were into, at that stage, we were into a lot of drum programming and drum overdubbing to program drums and stuff. So just for me personally, I'm not crazy about some of the drum tones. But then on the other hand, at the time, I look at what other bands, I look at what Metallica was doing and so on. It's kind of a similar, kind of a thing. And a lot of people really like it. So there's some tracks on there like, the title track, Edge of Excess, and Child of the City, I think are really kind of smoking tracks, really. And that album's a bit of a sleeper because, we released it and we were with Victory Records, which was a Polygram label. And the label sort of imploded a very short time after the album was released. So it never got pushed. So it's been a sleeper. It's really just been, Triumph fans have found out about it over the years and so on and so forth. And, I would think that, some of the fans that, just think of, well, the band is with Rick Emmett are maybe not as interested in it. And others fans are like, I can't believe it. It's like Gil and Mike and without Rick, and they got Phil, and Phil's unbelievable. And wow, this is neat. So a lot of people love that record. But Mike and I felt that, and Phil too, I think I can speak for all three of us. Like we felt that we were a good band, as the three of us, but it didn't feel or sound like Triumph. Rick is such a large signature with his voice and a large signature with his guitar, and Phil has an equally large signature, but it's completely different. So you take out a Rick Emmett, you put in a Phil X, you don't have the same band. You have a new band. So maybe we should have changed the name. I'm not sure really, but again, it's one of those things in history. You can't really redo it. That's what we did. We went out, we played a US tour with Phil, not a long one, but we played like, I think about 10 or 12 shows, mostly stadiums and outdoor festivals and things like that. But he had some great times with him on the road. And that's what I really remember about that record, jogging every morning with Phil X. That'll do it.
The other thing about that album is that a lot of fans that I spoke with, they didn't want to like it, but ended up loving it. So go figure.
Yeah.
And finally, a live record, but the return of the original three.
Well, you know what I remember about Sweden is, of course, this was a chance to rebond with Rick live. I mean, we just had a great time, and it was like, let's bring out the wives and the kids, and you know, some of our old friends, and let them see what Triumph's all about. You know, the Sweden Rock Festival is a venerable festival that's going for, you know, at that point had been going for 25 years, and we just got treated we got the royal treatment from the promoter. You know, he just did everything we asked him to do. We got our lighting director Paul and our front of house mixer Harry. We went over to Sweden. He got us the Rolling Stones, a theater that the Rolling Stones used, to rehearse in. It was a phenomenal place to rehearse, and we rehearsed for, I think, a week before we did the show. We were rusty, but we had a lot of fun, and the fans were amazing, and we just thought, hey, let's cut this together. We went and played another show 2 weeks later down near Dallas. Again, a big outdoor show called Rocklahoma. And I think it's just north of Dallas in Pryor, Oklahoma. And we closed the show there on the Saturday night. It was a big crowd, and we've got all that in the can. So there'll probably be another DVD or at least an album coming from that show down the road.
So at this point, what is the status of the band?
The status of the band right now is we have no plans at the moment to tour. However, we are working on a platform, I'll call it. It's not holograms, but it has a holographic element to it. It's a mixed reality platform, and if all things work out the way I'm trying to make them work out, then there will be a Triumph tour in 2024 or 2025. But it will be a new concept, and it will be something that hasn't been done before, not like the holograms that have been seen, like the Ronnie James Dio hologram or the Frank Zappa hologram, or the one they're doing with Whitney. It'll be something, I don't want to give too much away. It's just going to be something that'll blow people's minds and have a lot of eye candy that has not been seen before.
Wow, can't wait to see that and hear more about that. Finally, when it's all said and done, how would you like to be remembered as a band?
I really hope people could understand that we were there. We were trying to make people have a good time through music, and I think music is something that should bring people together, make people laugh and shout. It's something that is very, very powerful if it brings people together. And God knows we need more things to bring people together more than ever right now in the world. So I feel like that's the one thing we did. Like we didn't take it as serious. I don't know how to explain it. We took it seriously, but we didn't take it seriously, if you know what I mean. We loved our working on music. We loved the fans, and we loved the process of playing and performing and going in the studio and the whole thing. But I think sometimes people, when they're in entertainment, they take it too seriously instead of realizing, hey, this is about having fun. This is about bringing people together. This is about people, you know, pumping their fists and having a blast. And when they walk out of your arena and they saw Triumph, I wanted them to go out with a big smile on their face. You know, to me, that's what it was all about. And the way we kept it light in the band, it was all about humor. So Mike and Rick and I were constantly, you know, pulling gags on each other, having fun with the crew. And, you know, we had a great experience on the road with each other, with our crews and with our fans. And I just hope the people that were around us realized that, hey, we had fun with Triumph. You know, we we weren't there for any other reason than to make people have a great time and remember the night, and hopefully get, hook onto a few lyrics that would resonate with them and create some memories.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you for all this information. Thank you for speaking with me, and good luck with the documentary.
Thanks very much, Mark. You have a great night.